1+1 Forward, the podcast powered by the Apocalypse, where we talk about tabletop role-playing games using or inspired by the Apocalypse engine. I'm your MC Rich, and I'm joined by my guests, Liam and Ren Ginty of Sandy Puck Games. Hey Liam, hey Ren, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hey.
Nice to be here.
Very excited to have you guys on. I've seen the first thing that I saw of yours was your volume of games, like 10 small games that you released to drive through. The thing is beautiful and looks really, really interesting, and excited to have you on the show.
Was that the San Gennaro Short Games Digest?
That is exactly what it was. That definitely caught my eye.
It's a really, really cool project. Lots of really cool stuff going on in there.
So I have to ask, and I'm going to ask you both now. Liam, how long have you been playing PBTA games, and what was your gateway?
I think my gateway was Dungeon World. That's still my main game, and I think I've been playing basically since Dungeon World launched.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Keith Evans, who does a lot of the layout for Sandy Puck Games, recommended it to me at one point in time. It was like finding a game that I had been trying to play the entire time I'd been playing role-playing games. It was like the
Nice.
perfect balance between like the fluidity of action, and it felt freeing to play at the time. It felt freeing to run it, more importantly. It allowed me to like do a lot of the things that I was already doing with players in a more formalized and structured way, with GM moves and the like principles of asking questions as you played. And gotta be honest, it took me a long time before I even realized that there was an Apocalypse World that came before that. Which is funny, because Keith had recommended that to me as well, roughly when Apocalypse World had came out. And I'd bounced off of it, partially because at the time the setting wasn't something that appealed to me, the sort of like loose Apocalypse Worldy thing. And then I also like, at the time, was pretty deep in a lot more like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, and more like...
Right.
I guess systemic, crunchy is the word people use. I don't particularly like the term, but like when I read Apocalypse World, I was like, I don't know how you would do any of this stuff. This seems, don't know what that's all about. So I put it to the side. But then Dungeon World came out, and I guess it just hit me at that like perfect moment, and it's basically the only game I play now. Like it's like...
Nice. That's awesome. Ren, what about you? How long have you been playing PBTA games, and what was your gateway?
I would say probably the same thing, because whatever he started, he roped me into.
Fun. Well, Ren, do you normally play, or a GM, or what?
I only play. I tried GMing once. That it didn't go well for anyone involved.
Same story with my wife, too. Yeah, I hear you. That's awesome.
We're getting you back in there, though. I want you to run some more stuff. You have some cool ideas.
Yeah, it's that whole... coming up with stuff on the spot that I'm not good at.
That's why Dungeon World's so good, because you get the other people to do it for you.
Oh, that's a good point.
When you get stuck, you just ask them what you were trying to figure out.
That's exactly what you do. Awesome. Well, let's jump on over here and read a sitch.
All right.
Read a sitch. All right, in our read a sitch topic for this time around, Liam, you wanted to talk about introducing people to tabletop role-playing games, especially younger children and older folks, and if possible, PBTA. But hey, we can generalize it. So tell me a little bit about how often do you run games for younger folks or older folks?
Well, more than I really thought that I would. This really started one year. It was a while ago now. I was talking to Ren's dad about tabletop role-playing games, and he mentioned that like he had tried Dungeons and Dragons when he was younger, like in college or something.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be rude, but Ren's dad, what, like 60?
65.
So he's a little older, you know. He's not ancient or anything, but like he was talking to me about playing Dungeons and Dragons in college, and how like it was something that he enjoyed, but he really just doesn't do anymore. He's got like a full-time job. He's a very, very, very important position in this business he's in.
People to play with.
He doesn't have anyone to play with. And I was like, oh, you know what? I've been playing this new game, Dungeon World. Like, would you like to try it out? And he's like, I don't know. And Ren's got this brother who is, shall we say, antisocial. He doesn't like hanging out with people. He's very introverted. He doesn't like those big family gatherings. Even more so at the time. He was like really in his shell. But he's got all these stories. You know, every time I'd come over, he'd have like a new story to tell me. I think we all know someone who's been writing a novel the entire time we've known them, but like never has a page to show for it. And that's kind of Ren's brother a bit. But he's got this really good creative mind and all these really interesting ideas. And I thought, you know what, like, maybe we should do a thing here. Maybe we should get, like, the family together and we should run a game and we should see what happens. And I was writing this... I had this, like, Wizard Tower game that I ran a lot. It's this adventure where you go into a wizard tower and you go through, like, some pretty typical Dungeons and Dragons-esque dungeon crawling, but, like, the twist is kind of... It's a little satirical. It's a little poking fun at the tropes. It's got that sort of thing in it. And I ran it for them. It was just a really, really awesome experience because Ren's brother, like, sort of, like, sparked to life, and he was, like, he really, like, snapped onto the question asking part of it really well. He was, like, really into, like, answering the little details about the world and making stuff up about things on the fly. And the dad was, like, it was like watching the like, long buried instincts come to life. He was, like, checking for traps every 5 minutes, and, like, every time I'd introduce a character that, like, talked rather than fought, he'd be instantly suspicious of it and be like, well, we gotta make sure this is going okay, we can't leave anything here. And Ren was a perfect player, like, helping to point the spotlight at the two of them at the time. It was just this really wholesome experience, and it really made me think about, like, how useful role-playing games... I think a lot of people play role-playing games with their, like, friend groups, and they don't think about how, like, they make for a really good sort of family experience. And I know a couple of people now who do, like... I've got this wonderful friend, Anna Manning, who used to be on a space podcast of mine a lot, who runs, like, a weekly Doctor Who game with his kids.
Nice.
Dungeon World at the time managed to bridge that gap where there was this really loose and wild, like, creative energy paired with this setting and this kind of style that the dad latched onto as something that he remembered. And it was a really, really wholesome experience. So, like, to answer the question you asked about 4 hours ago, I do it semi-often now, and whenever I get a chance, and whenever I feel like there's an opportunity there to make, like, connections between folks, or to, like, show people a creative way of expressing stories that doesn't necessarily have to be so formalized as writing, which is to say more than I ever thought I would.
Do you have any particular tips? Like, one of the things that I specifically have found as a challenge when I try to run things for my son, he's 13 now, we started way long ago, is, like, the session length was a big factor. Do you have any tips along how do you structure that initial conversation, and how long do you think it's a good time to play within?
It's something that I think boils down to the individual people. I know that I've run games for younger people back home in England when I visited, where, like, they were really into it to the point where they wanted, like, 6 hours, like, deep in, and, like, they just wanted to keep going. And then, like, when I played with Ren's brother, a tight 2 or 3 hours even, like, a shorter session was really the key there. Again, I know that I'm just sort of singing Dungeon World's praises here, but, like, Dungeon World to me always feels like a game that makes it easy to do, like, an action movie style approach. It feels like you can always have something happening. And so long as you're constantly doing the thing that Powered by the Apocalypse encourages you to do, which is either at any time you should be asking a question or introducing some sort of adversary, be that, like, a trap or a puzzle or a problem, and you should just constantly have that chatter going on. There should always be something happening. As long as you can maintain that to me has always been the key to running it with smaller folks, with young children and what have you. For older people, I mean, they're fully grown adults. You gotta ask them what they're into at that point.
What?
I know,
Actual
right?
conversation at the table? That's crazy. Are there any other tips that you'd like to throw out there for folks that are thinking about taking the plunge and running this for either a parent or a child or somewhere in between?
It's the same. It's honestly the same stuff that I think that the game tells you to do. You know, say yes more often. Make sure that everyone, like, especially young children, you want to make sure as a GM that you're not, like, don't go in with these preconceived ideas about what kind of game you want to run and what kind of characters you want to see out of people. Like, that's hard to do. I think that, like, we underplay how hard it is to let go of that in GM sometimes, but, like, go in and just be prepared for whatever they say and try to roll with it in some way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? If you're like, right, we're going to play this Dungeons and Dragons, like, dungeon crawl thing to introduce this game to you all so that you all know what happens, and the young kid says, well, I want a laser gun. Well, alright, well, I guess there's laser guns now. Like, we'll just figure that out and roll with it there. 'Cause the key thing is, it's not, especially for your first session, it's not really important how, like, coherent or cohesive the world is, or how, like, involved the setting is, and all this other stuff. Like, that's the sort of thing you can worry about with your, like, normal weekly table. With a young person, introducing them to games for the first time, and an older person introducing them to games for the first time, you kind of want to just make sure that they're having a blast and seeing, like, the highlights of what this game's about. That negotiation of, like, well, you want to have a laser gun, well, the rest of the team wants to have, like, a Lord of the Rings experience. You can navigate that, but in the end, you should probably just be willing to adjust whatever you can to make sure people are getting to play the thing that's in their mind. That gets you over that first hurdle, I think, really quickly.
Great. Rin, did you have any tips for running things for younger or older folks?
Having visuals actually is a lot of fun, and having like drawing boards and stuff like that, especially something that kids can like use to utilize and see visually, and older people actually would benefit from that a lot. I do.
The whiteboard's really useful.
The whiteboard has been phenomenal for me even, and it's like sometimes I get like a little disorientated, so that's my biggest suggestion is visuals is a real great tool to use.
That is really great. Thank you guys so much. This is very helpful. Let's jump on over here and open our brains to the game that is the title of this particular episode. Open your brain. Currently on Kickstarter, you have a brand new game called Disposable Heroes. Now, what is Disposable Heroes about? Is there a setting? What's this thing about?
There is a loose setting. It is more of a sort of prompt than like a full setting book.
Mm-hmm.
That's partially down to the format of the game. What we're hoping to ship is a deck of cards, and that's it. So it doesn't leave a lot of room for like large spiels of lore and everything, but there is a world that it's set in. Disposable Heroes is set in like a neon slick, like electrical, funky city. We call it Neo Francisco, but like we encourage players to come up with their own like wild idea. What it comes from is if you've ever played like Jet Set Radio.
Oh my gosh, dude, that was so where as soon as you said Neo Francisco, it's like I would run this in Jet Set Radio.
Yep.
Okay. Nice.
So yeah, if you imagine the sort of Jet Set Radio is set in a city that looks like Tokyo and has all of the names of a city in Tokyo, but is like bonkers, right? Like it's out of this world. That exact kind of vibe. Big Hero 6 does it too, where it's like a real city, but like all the dials are cranked up all the way to 11, and then you like punt the time maybe like 50 years in the future, right? That's where Disposable Heroes is set. And then you also got to throw in the fantasy elements. So like, I always really like this visual of like the upside down pyramid that we ran in one of the test games of like this black onyx pyramid floating in the middle of downtown where a lich lives. You know, you've got all of these like these wild places and these places of power and these lairs that all of these big powerful monsters live in, like liches and dragons and demons. And into this setting comes the players, who aren't really heroes. They're not adventurers. They're not looking to save the world. They are gig economy package delivery people who use an app called Disposable Heroes to get jobs. And they have to deliver a package to whoever it is in the terrifying, dangerous dungeon, basically.
They're just trying to get a paycheck.
Yeah, they're just trying to get a paycheck. And the 5-star rating's important. So, like, the gameplay itself sort of comes off of that setting really nicely, where, like, first of all, Disposable Heroes, the title, is exactly what happens in the game. The key sort of pull of the game is that it's high lethality. Your character is going to die the very first time they take damage, almost certainly.
Oh. Okay.
Right. So that's going to happen, but this deck of cards you have, which is what the whole game is based around, that's what you have instead of playbooks. Instead of having a playbook that you fill out at the beginning of the game, you draw a card, and that's your character. And on that card, you have a name, a class, a weapon, some stats, and an animal. We can drill down in whatever those details in a bit, but like fundamentally, that's your character. And then whenever you take damage, you discard that card and draw a new one, because there's dozens of you. You're not the only gig economy package delivery person out there, and in fact, anyone can be stepping up to take your job at any moment. And Disposable Heroes just sends another paladin or ranger in to help you deliver the package. In addition to like sort of the standard risks that all that comes along with, and all the standard risks that a dungeon crawler has, you and your team also have to keep this package safe and undamaged. Because if it gets damaged, you're going to lose your 5-star rating, and you're going to get kicked off the platform.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the pitch, I guess. That's like the basic concept of the game. And the setting a little bit too.
So it's a team of delivery experts that get called in, and then if one particular gig worker player character goes down, then that player would draw a new card, and this other person shows up because the app called for some backup?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. All right. Is this kind of a one-shotty type game, or is there something you're going to lace in to kind of string stories together, or just trying to get, like, is this like a party game kind of thing, or?
I think it's fun. It's a one-shot. Like, it's designed around the one-shot idea. A lot of the genesis of this comes from a yearly Gen Con game that I run with some people, where, like, we would run this, like, round-robin high lethality game every year. And, like, the intention of it is to be a one-shot. But we have been playtesting it as a slightly longer campaign thing, and it works pretty well. The place it falls down at is advancement mechanics, and I have some ideas about how to play around with that. But, like, as the game exists at this very minute, I'd say it's very much focused around one-shot games. I wouldn't say it's a party game so much. It definitely is lightweight. But, I mean, you get a full RPG experience out of it. Like, it's just slightly different. It's a different vibe than you get from most games. The lack of connection to a specific character, obviously, is something that really changes the dynamic quite a bit.
Okay. I have to ask, because this is the first thing that popped in my head.
Yeah.
So, you've got named folks like, I don't know, Zuzu the Fighter, and that's in a deck of cards. So let's say the Zuzu gets cacked, and then, I don't know, we're playing a week later and somebody draws Zuzu. Is this like the same Zuzu? Does Zuzu have a twin? Like, are there rules to handle that, or is that just where you figure it out at the table?
We figured it out at the table, basically, yeah. There's a couple of elements.
There's a necromancer.
There's a necromancer.
There you go.
The necromancer brings them all back at the end. Yeah, you figure it out at the table. I mean, it's not something that we sort of thought needed, like, a systemic answer for. There's a couple of things that, like, work with how the deck... What happens when the deck gets empty, for example, and like that sort of thing. There's some rules about, but like ultimately, we've had, especially right now, we have a deck of about 30 cards that we've used to playtest the game, and with 30 cards, if you have enough people at the table, like when we were stress testing this, at one point we played it with 10 people at once, just to see like how far the numbers and how big this scales. They got through the deck pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And then just started using characters again. And, like, they decided that it was the same characters. They decided that, like, their characters just sort of returned. And I think my favorite one was, right at the beginning of the game, this character got squished. They'd been shrunk down with, like, a shrink ray. And the character had gotten squished by, like, an elven baby had just sat on them. And, everyone at the time were like, well, they died. But when they came back, they were like, no, it was fine. It wasn't as bad as it looked. It was all good. And they made a joke about how their character returned by, like, dropping off of a giant elven baby that just sort of rampaged through the scene at that point. So, you know, it's a playful thing. And maybe we will come up with some, like, in-universe explanation of why your characters can come back or why they have the same names. But maybe not. Yeah.
I honestly prefer to keep it, like, free form.
Yeah, like the animals, too, is similar to that, but we'll get to that.
Cool. I know we've got this deck of cards that have your prefab character in it. What else is different about this game versus, say, Apocalypse World? If someone's only ever played Apocalypse World or Dungeon World, and they step up to give this thing a shot, what are the things you'd tell them to help to introduce them to it?
I suppose the two biggest differences is that your character is not concrete.
Mm-hmm.
Once you die, you get another character.
They're more like equipment, almost.
Yeah,
Cool.
essentially. And they only have, like, one power each.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when you get a new character, you get a new power, you get new abilities. The other thing is the big bad guy you're not fighting at the end. You're
Just
fighting
the
to get
package,
there.
yeah.
You're just giving him the package.
Yeah. That is like one of my favorite stories from playtesting is when we had like a group together to play it and they get to the end of this dungeon and one or two people were like, there's the lich, I'm going to draw my sword and get ready, and someone else went, wait, no. Don't kill him, that's our paycheck. And they were like, well, but they're gonna do this evil ritual, and they were like, yeah, that's not our problem, that's someone else's job. I'm trying to get out of here alive, like...
You're like
That's
the
good.
delivery man, while the other, like, another game of, like, heroes are going around.
There's presumably another gig app out there that's, like, for doing that sort of thing. I'd say that in addition to that as well, like, obviously the high lethality part of it is a big deal. There's no player health, fundamentally. There's armor, but that acts, like, ablatively. That's basically health. But only some cards get that. I'd say that also, like, deck play is an element of the game. There's several characters that's powers. We'll call them powers. We mean moves. But their moves, like, fundamentally are about messing around with the deck in some way. Either, like, giving players more cards to choose from, or there's a fire mage whose main power is that they can, like, burn cards from the deck into the discards to empower their spells. That sort of thing, you know, like we really want to make the deck a part of the game in just as much as like a method for delivering characters to the people. And one thing that we don't talk about enough as well is that it scales down better than basically any RPG I've ever played. Given that the characters are just cards, you can play one-on-one with someone else, and they can have like 4 characters, and they can play those 4 characters significantly easier than you could play 4 characters that have playbooks.
Yeah.
You could, you know, it's you play a party rather than play as one character. I think that works very, very well, and was part of the inspiration for the game from you.
Yeah.
Nice. That sounds really cool. I like the idea. I mean, I have played and run in 1v1 games, but the idea of someone being able to play an entire party, that's really interesting. I dig it.
The deck play stuff comes into its own with one-on-one stuff too. With a party, it's fun, but like, take the chef. The chef has an ability where they take 2 cards and then they discard them as like ingredients, quote unquote, and then they can then draw 2 or 3 from the top of the deck and keep 1 or 2 of those. So you can imagine in a group that becomes kind of a tool to cycle out cards that aren't super useful or that players aren't enjoying very well. But as a one player, suddenly that's like almost like a 4 deck building move. It's like someone's looking at their hand, hearing the trial and being like, well, none of these help, so I'll try to do some deck manipulation and see what I can get out of the... there we go, I've got something that might be helpful now. I need some armor in my hand, let's see about getting the fighter or something, you know, like... We should talk more about the one-on-one stuff more. It's really cool.
Well, you just mentioned a really cool move. Is that your favorite move, or do you have any other favorite moves you want to share from the game?
I think the Trash Mage is my favorite. The whole being able to just summon trash and use that as a weapon, just, I don't know, really hits that funny bone in me.
It's not even just a weapon. My favorite part is how really creative people get with it. And, like, the description... The card say, I think the move is just you can summon anything that can be, like, reasonably referred to as trash. And so, like...
It really opens up, like, a lot of possibilities, and I love seeing what people come up with.
There was the one playtest we did where they were tiny, the same one where the people got crushed by the elf, and they, there's this, like, big ocean of, like, spilled potion that causes all kinds of nasty effects in this playtest. The Trash Mage just said, well... I get, like, a used styrofoam container, and that's our boat now. And it was just great. And then they're, like, sailing along in the boat, firing, like, cans of soup at tiny demons that were flying around. The demons got shrunk, too, obviously. So they're firing these, like, full-scale cans of soup at people. Yeah, that's a really good move. I like that one a lot. Trash Mage was the first one you came up with, right?
No, that one was actually just a doodle that I didn't even, like... think about, and you were like, you should put that in the game, and I was like, oh my god, you're right. I just drew a hermit crab in a Coke can, and
Nice.
we were like, oh yeah, we should
My favorite move is probably the chef, just because, like, or the fire mage, just because the deck play is something that I've played a lot of role-playing games. I don't know a lot of role-playing games that have, like, that kind of element to it where you're playing around with a deck of cards in that particular way.
Mm-hmm.
There are definitely RPGs out there that allow you to play around with a deck of cards, but I don't know of many that have that kind of particular feel to them. You know what I mean? It is the most unique feeling mechanic in the game. Which I worded very carefully to not imply that the game does not have any other unique mechanics.
You guys have got me pretty excited about some of these things, especially that Trash Mage. Good call, because I had my eye on that one too. Why don't we jump on over here and maybe act under fire and give this thing a spin? Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds fine to me.
It is time to act under fire.
All right, in Act Under Fire, what we do is I make these guys run the game for me. I am excited to give Disposable Heroes a shot. I'm going to listen to Red here and go with Salazar, the Trash Mage, the Hermit Crab, with a Coke can. Now, it's not on the card, but now I know he was originally envisioned with a Coke can, so he needs to have one.
It'll probably be a store brand or something.
I'm sorry, he's got a DC Cola can.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll say that's the card that I've drawn, because
Sure.
I really like it, so I wanted to start with that. So what do we do?
Let's do like a battle. Let's do like a fight. Let's do like
Okay.
a golem or something. You crawl onto this like wide open coliseum almost. You're a little tired. You've been traipsing through this tower this whole time, this wizard's tower, and in the center of the room, sort of doubled over and deactivated, is a large mechanical suit of armor. You recognize these because you've seen them dotted around the tower, but mostly they were in pieces or in bits. This one appears to be fully intact, and it is kind of like jittering. What do you do?
Well, I checked the app. Am I supposed to deliver it to a jittering suit of armor?
No, the app says that you're supposed to deliver it to the chaos-infused shadow of what was once Draxus the Lich, which is a cool title, but it does not mention a golem or a robot or a suit of armor or anything.
All right. I want to look around. Is there another way past this thing? Maybe I can just scoot past it.
There is so the ceiling is domed, and it's pretty high up, but you do see sort of like what do you call it? Like a wheel that you would turn to open a door on like a submarine or something. You know kind of what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
There's something like that right in the middle of the dome at the top of this building, this room.
Ooh, okay.
It's pretty high up. You couldn't like jump to it or anything.
Well, I think what I'd like to do to try to get past this, since I've got the big airlocky thing at the top of the dome, is the hermit crab. Why can't I scuttle up the dome? So I'm going to try to make my way up to the round handle.
Okay. Yeah, hermit crabs can crawl up walls, right? Sure. So when you get up to the top, you see it's sealed with not just the lock, but there's also runes embedded in like the handle that are sort of faintly glowing.
Okay. Well, I am a trash mage, so I know about runes. I've got to see if I can figure out these runes. Perhaps there's a pattern to unlock the door.
Okay. I think that you should discern realities in that case, I think.
All right. So I'll be rolling 2d6 plus 2. Here we go. And thank goodness I had a plus 2 because I rolled a 6, so that's an 8.
Okay. You get to ask me one question.
Cool. So the question I'd like to ask is, what do these things do? What do these runes do? How do I make them go?
The runes are... They are a lock of sorts, but what they do is make it very awkward and difficult to turn the handle, rather than impossible. It just makes it kind of a pain to do, like a stuck jar or something like that. And as you're reading this, as you're figuring this out, you hear a creaking down below. Just before you get a chance to look down, a huge metal ball covered in spikes smashes the ceiling near you. Not on you, you're still attached to the roof and everything, but this big ball with a big chain leading back to the mechanical being down below.
His little eyes get gigantically large as he fearfully says, I've got a delivery here. Can you take me to to the chaos-infused shadow of Draxus the Lich, perhaps?
The machine, you hear like a grinding whir, and you see the ball retreat back into the slot that makes up its arm. And you hear in a booming voice a language you don't quite understand. And the machine, its eyes pulse like twice blue. And then it waits for like a second.
Oh, that seems like a good thing. Stuck jaw. Maybe I just need to get through this door. Well, I am going to see if I can wriggle my little hermit crab claws around and try to unstick this jaw just with mighty effort.
Okay.
Pry open this door while the robot thing is cycling and perhaps maybe it's phoning home. I don't know. But yeah, see if I can open the door and get out of here.
I think it's probably a defy danger with strength in that case.
Okay, that's great. It turns out that I'm not very strong. I have a -1. And that's great because it really didn't make me fail any worse. I rolled a 3, so that's modified to a 2.
So, you grip onto the wheel, and you start turning it with all of your might, and that's the last thing that poor Salazar gets to experience as the big spiked ball smashes into the ceiling again, erasing the little fella. Go ahead and draw a new card.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Poor Salazar. We weep. I am now playing Zuzu the Fighter, who happens to be a badger.
All right. Whichever way you decide to re-enter the scene, sometimes people like to have the Disposable Heroes app literally make a portal. Sometimes folks just like to say that they were tagging along the whole time. Either or. You're standing before the big machine. The big machine is still sort of preoccupied with the big chain and ball up in the ceiling. So you have like a window there.
Nice. I am viewing on the app exactly like it did a video capture of the last few seconds as I could see the demise of poor Salazar. And I realized that that's really not a negotiating tactic. Salazar is really stupid. Good thing I've got this job. I'm going to draw my ancestral longsword and charge this thing while it is still retracting its big ball and chain.
All right. Doesn't Zuzu's...
Zuzu has a move. When you go into battle, roll strength. On a 10+, name one who will live and one who will die. On a 7 to 9, name one who will live or one who will die. The GM will make it happen if remotely possible. Guess who I am planning on making live? All right, let's see if I can pull it off. My strength is a 2. And I have rolled a 7 + 2 is a 9, so I will name this jittery golem robot to be the thing that will die.
All right. So you charge into battle and get this vision of the robot's demise. Tell me about it.
The vision that I have with the robot's demise is that it's sprung tight from that chain. If I can just cut the chain before it retracts it in, while it's retracting it in, I can cause it to kind of back up and mess it up pretty badly. So that's the plan. I'm going to aim for that chain and try to hack it.
Sounds awesome. As if on purpose, as if designed by someone. You hear the clicking and whirs of the gears inside of the shoulder of the machine, and you see this chain begin to whip back into it.
Ooh, darting forward on my little badger legs, I will leap up into the air, raising my ancient ancestral longsword that has been in my generation for like 2.5 generations, and then I'm going to bring it down on that chain.
All right, that sounds to me like a hack and slash.
All right, here we go. I have rolled an 8 + 2 is a 10.
Stupendous. You cleft this chain in half. It's like butter to your sword. You hear the hiss of magic and enchantments breaking as you cut through this chain, and you see even the wisps of blue smoke as the chaos magic keeping this thing running breaks down. The big metal ball with spikes whizzes just over your furry little head and smashes into the mechanical guardian, crumpling it into bits.
Oh, wow. That, I hope he has insurance. Yeah, I'm gonna... I think with that out of the way, I will walk over to the discarded DC Cola can, pick it up, see if there's any. There's no liquid left. And then I'll head on towards the exit and get out of here so that I can find the Lich.
Maybe you like scale up the wall. Like you're a strong fighter. I can't.
I'm a very strong badger. Yes, I think what I do in order to scale the wall is I take that chain, right, and I like whip it around, and I'll throw it up there. And see if I can catch it on and climb up.
Yeah, there's nothing opposing you, so I'd say that just occurs, and you manage
Awesome.
to yank open that door. Much easier now that you're not a hermit crab, now that you have some semblance of hands. You scoot into the hatch. You emerge in an almost impossible space, out of a hole in this plate of glass that seems to stretch on forever, out in this pure black abyss. There are 2 staircases that go up to a landing higher up above the glass that you're on. And atop of that, you see what must only be the chaos-infused shadow of what was once Draxus the Lich. It is this skeletal being wreathed in blue crystals with these blacker-than-black wings sprouting out from behind it, with these blazing blue eyes. "Hello," it says to you, looking down on this enormous pedestal.
Yes, Disposable Heroes here with your slippers.
Excellent. Draxus floats down seamlessly onto the glass and walks toward you, the very presence a weight upon your back.
Ooh, I'll set the box down and maybe take a couple. They have death auras, these liches. I've read it online somewhere. I'm just going to try to stay a few feet away. Maybe not look directly at the blue eyes there, and hopefully maybe a tip, I don't know.
Do I have something on my face? What's up?
No, I was averting my eyes out of respect. It's in the manual.
Oh, okay, yeah. I guess some people do that. Draxus picks up the box, gives it a little shake. Seems pretty good. Good job. I'll give you the 5 stars on the app, okay?
Fantastic.
Draxus pulls out a cell phone and gives you, and you hear a couple of boops on the phone.
Great. That's good to hear.
I don't know. What should I tip you?
Oh, it's, customary is 12%.
Okay, that sounds good. Fine with me. Draxus pulls out a cell phone, and you see their like bony hand try to use it. They go, I'll do it later. I'll give you feedback and stuff. When I get one of my minions to do it.
Oh, great! Yeah, 5 stars would be the best. It makes sure that. Anyway, thanks so much for that.
All right, so you can see yourself out.
Right.
That's sort of how the game goes.
All right. Well, that was really cool.
Usually, when we play with just one other person, I recommend. I think it's even in the rules. The other person gets at least 3. I think maybe even 4 characters rather than just the one. But for something like this, as a rapid fire way to kind of demo it, it's fine. It doesn't matter either way.
Cool. Well, Liam, Ren, thank you so much for coming on Plus One Forward. Now, real quick about the Kickstarter. Any particular details about the Kickstarter you wanted to share with our listeners?
The one other area that I think we want to talk about, Ren wanted to talk a little bit about the art direction and some of the art stuff in the game.
Yes.
Okay.
It was inspired by Jet Set Radio. One of the great things about it, when we started, I was really thinking of like realistic animals with like an alligator with a sword and it dressed up as a paladin. And I thought it was funny, but it really wasn't what we wanted. And now that we've gone like this more like graffiti and Jet Set Radio style, it actually just allows people to have like a lot more imagination on it. So we have some characters that are like whales and stuff. Now it's like, all right, are you seeing these as like humanoids? Are they like people with like animal powers? Or are they just like cartoonish animals or something like that? Yeah. I love all directions. I love to like view it always. And is the whale like the whale in SpongeBob? Does it just have tiny little legs or float around in a hovercraft?
That was like a
It's
good
up to
3
you.
days that we spent trying to figure out how the whale moves around, because that was kind of integral to the
I always thought it was silly to try. It's just like, let them think of it.
But folks can go on the Kickstarter and check it out, because I think the art direction, both by Ren, that each card has like a really cool tag that summarizes not just like the class and the animal, but sort of it sells a personality behind the character really well. We have Francita and Hector are 2 of our layout artists and also standard artists, who've done an amazing job at making the cards just pop. They look amazing. While we're on art, there's a couple of cool things about the Kickstarter, but I think that while we're on art, just to wrap it up, our stretch goal is we reached out to 5 really cool artists with this diverse portfolio of different kinds of art, and every 500 over our goal we hit, we're going to commission 1 card from each of them, another tag for each of them, and then that'll expand the deck too. So if we get, I think the total is 5 from each, so an extra 25 cards for the deck, which will take it from 65 to more than that, 90, I guess.
I think,
yeah,
something like that.
I'm good at math, which is why I'm a games designer. So it'll expand it all the way up to a 90 card deck, which is like incredible, like 90 different characters to play as.
That's awesome.
And then just these cards are going to be a work of art, which is really important to me because they're the tactile, feely bits that you get to play with in the game. The same way how people really like to have beautiful dice, people are going to really enjoy seeing how pretty these cards and how awesome the artwork is going to be on it. Definitely check it out.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for coming on Plus One Forward, and good luck with the Kickstarter.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Plus One Forward is a production of the Gauntlet community, Richard Rogers and Rach Shelkey. You can find us at gauntlet-rpg.com or follow us on Twitter at @+1FWD. If you would like to support our show, visit our Patreon site at patreon.com/gauntlet. The games mentioned on this show use the Apocalypse engine, which is a creation of Vincent and Magay Baker. The music for Plus One Forward is from the Savage Aural Hotbed CD Gomi Daiko. The songs used are Gomi Daiko, Metal Version, and Drowning Attitude. You can find more amazing tunes by Savage Aural Hotbed on their website, www.savageauralhotbed.com.
Hello, listeners. This coming October, the Gauntlet will once again be putting on GauntletCon, our online gaming convention. GauntletCon will include guests, panels, a dedicated Discord server for mustering, and lots of RPG sessions. Many will be streamed and recorded. GauntletCon runs October 24th through 27th, with events throughout those days to cover many time zones. If you're interested in our newsletter for GauntletCon, you can sign up at gauntlet-rpg.com/gauntlet-con-2019. GauntletCon's a great gaming experience, and I hope you'll consider joining us as a GM, a player, or a viewer.